Coming up on show 749, how the virus lockdown is giving us all a taste of a fully electric future. Stick around, I'll tell you more. Plus, we're talking about the Mercedes-Benz EQE. It's been spied in the snow. Tesla's Octo valve is discussed and admired by Elon Musk himself. How more states are following California with their own rules, and how the Mini Electric SE will go further than the EPA say. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily for Wednesday, 15th of April. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story, so you don't have to. Following the pandemic closure of production facilities around the world, car makers are just starting to carefully reopen those production plants making cars and components again, and we're going to keep an eye on, as it happens, those ones that begin to get up and running again. According to Electrive, now that Hyundai in the Czech Republic are going back into production, the European production of the Kona Electric can now continue. Up until now, the Kona's only been made in the home market of South Korea, but with the recent opening of the plant in Czech Republic, they were able to dramatically shorten what was previously a 12-month waiting list for the Kona. A great car with a great battery at its biggest size, 64 kilowatt hours. And in fact, the European version goes ever so slightly farther as well. Only just before the lockdown did they start making the European Konas, but they managed to make a few actually. And the European arm of the Korean company are getting back into making those cars. It's a tentative reopening. It's not a full production reopening in the Czech Republic. It's not all the shifts working all hours of the day, but they are just starting to make the Kona again, and that's a great thing for those people that really want to get into an EV. And actually, it's a kind of subject that we're talking about on Question of the Week this week. Stick around until the end, and maybe you can send me your thoughts and I'll read them out on Sunday. Well, a brand new spy video has caught a fleet of Mercedes-Benz in the snow, testing and camouflage, and now we get to see a look at a fleet of Mercedes-Benz EQE. Now, of course, we know about the EQC. That's the car that's on sale already, and that is the SUV-style Mercedes-Benz, which is like mega luxury, by the way. If you haven't seen an EQC on the inside, if you haven't had a chance, if you've not been lucky enough to drive one, you know, when you shut the door on that, it's a proper German luxury car. It's a thud, right? And the EQC is a very, very nice car. It doesn't win any individual award. It's never going to beat a Tesla 0 to 60. And not that Teslas are one-trick ponies, but it won't beat a Tesla 0 to 60. And it won't go the farthest range. It's not the most efficient. And yes, it's a pretty heavy car, but boy oh boy, is the EQC 400 4MATIC, full name. A very, very nice car. No, now we are talking about the EQE. Well, a new spy video has caught a fleet of them driving through the snow in very heavy camouflage, including some placeholders on the body that conceal the shape of the car. Now, out front, the EV's nose is smooth because you don't need a massive air take to cool down a combustion engine. Same as the EQC. Very similar style to the EQC, by the way. And you've seen those pictures of the EQS. It's very much the family face of Mercedes-Benz EQ family. A tiny vertical strip of camouflage on the headlights. Now that makes us wonder, says Motor One, if the designers are considering a split layout like older examples of the E-Class. Well, the EQE is looking at a powertrain of all-wheel drive, much like the EQC. So 4MATIC branding again on that, driving all four wheels with a motor on each axle. 402 horsepower. Over 370 miles, that's over 600 Ks of range is what they're targeting. And the EQE is going to sit underneath the EQS in the range lineup. They actually look very similar. They've got that sedan, saloon style. It's a proper car, not a raised crossover or SUV. It's the camouflage cars at least, and you can't really see what the final bodywork is going to look like. But it has that swooping rear end as well that is, for many people, their personal preference and taste. I do get the crossover / SUV thing that literally everybody wants to buy one. But if you do want a proper car, this will definitely tick the box. You know, a Model 3 is, or a Polestar 2. And when are we looking at getting these on the roads? I don't think it'll be 2021. I don't think it'll be next year. But if it's the end of 2021 for a 2022 model year, that's when I reckon they'll finally be finished and into series production. Moving on to Tesla, and in their latest podcast, Third Row talked to Elon Musk and Sandy Munro about some of the innovations in the Tesla Model Y and how they've optimised the design since the Model 3. According to Kyle Field for Clean Technica, starting things off, they dived into the octo valve in the Tesla Model Y. What is the octo valve? It replaces, in the Model 3, which was a more simple system for diverting the heating and cooling around the car. And this is all tied in with the Model Y's heat pump. Now, the S and the 3 and the X don't have heat pumps. The Model Y is the first Tesla car to have a heat pump, and it's an incredibly important thing to add to a car, particularly in cold weather climates as well. And so in order to have a central place that is digitally controlled in order to move the heating and cooling of the cabin and the battery pack and the powertrain, the drivetrain, they've invented a new valve system with a little octopus logo on it called the Octo Valve, which was only discovered when they tore down the Model Y. It enables the Model Y to have a range comparable to Model 3. Everyone's been wondering, what have they done? Have they unlocked more from the batteries? It turns out, actually, it's just efficiencies that they've made in the Model Y. So with the Model Y having a similar range to the 3, a lot of it is put down to this very, very clever heating and cooling system and making efficient use of the electrons that you're carrying on board. The improvements to the new heat pump system in the Model Y translates to what is, when you think about it, a staggering 10% improvement in efficiency. Well, it's the result of Tesla's efforts, and they've called it the Octo Valve and a completely redesigned heat pump in the Model Y. Elon Musk says that he has a shelf at home with some trophies, like the best things that his companies have designed, circuit boards and inventions, and he's taken an Octo Valve from the Model Y home and he's put one on the shelf because he's just so proud of the Tesla engineers. He gives all credit to them. He says, nothing to do with me. And he credits that as being a very important part of the Model Y to achieve the range that it does. Talking about the Kona, by the way, but not just in Europe now, but global sales in March, Hyundai managed to bring back their global plug-in car sales closer to their peak results, above 8,000 a month. 5,000 Konas make up the bulk of that 8,000 plug-in Hyundais. According to the official stats, the company sold 8,079 cars with a plug last month in March. That's 5% of their total sales volume globally, by the way, cars with a plug socket on. We are talking about the Hyundai Kona Electric, 5,000 of those sold globally, 1,400 of them in South Korea. There's also the Hyundai Electric and the Hyundai Ioniq plug-in version. And I did my 1 hour, well, it's 45 minutes, really, my 45 minutes of exercise earlier today. Walked to the end of the road and picked up some supplies, took the little fella out in his pushchair and came back again. And there was an Ioniq at the petrol station because our local co-op has a petrol station attached to it. And I just wasn't thinking. I was like, oh, it's an Ioniq. I wonder if it's a plug-in or a hybrid or the full petrol version. And I'm like, well, it wouldn't be the electric version. Goodness me. I just wasn't thinking. So, let me go look at the badge on the back. Could be the electric. Yeah, I'm not sure why they'd be pumping gas into the electric one. What a wally. Anyway, it was, well, to finish the story, it was the hybrid one. So, yeah, no plug socket on that, but still a very nice car, and still an incredibly efficient car in electric form, by the way. The latest Hyundai Ioniq, if anyone listening to this podcast has one, I always love to hear from listeners of this show about the cars that you drive, especially the EV owners that listen to this show, because so many of them I've either only sat in or just test driven and never owned. And I've never owned the Ioniq Electric. And, you know, what? Big boot, big car, and crazy efficiency as well. And it's one of those ones that you think, I'd very happily own one of those. I'm very happy with the Zoe, but I'd very happily own one of those. The new one as well, just looks with a longer range, just fantastic. Feel free to email me anytime about your EV. Or the EV that you want to buy. My personal address is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Especially, by the way, if you drive an EV that's not available here because it's, because of the proximity effect, I sometimes forget to talk about them. Like the Chevy Bolt. I don't talk about that car as much as I should do on this podcast because they're not available here. don't mention the Ampera E. That's not available here. And so, for that reason, I'm very guilty of ignoring the Bolt a little bit. It's very much on my mind. It's not intentional, by the way. Whenever there's a story that I can find, I report on it. Like this one. General Motors has issued a recall for certain Chevy Bolts. They're from the 2019 and 2020 production runs. And this is a really odd malfunction. And it can cause the rear doors to open while you're driving along. Door handle cables in the affected vehicles. Now, there's 897 of them, so if you are a Bolt owner, check if you're one. The cables may be too long, according to NHTSA. And, says Green Car Reports, when the rear window gets opened, it can sometimes contact and snag on the door handle cable. If the cable gets damaged from the window opening, it can cause the door to swing open. That's less good. Yeah, maybe if you're a Bolt owner, just check. It's the weirdest recall that I've heard of, and I'm sure it's an easy fix and they'll get that sorted for you. Well, last month, Washington State became the 12th state to adopt California's zero emissions mandate. Next up, Minnesota, New Mexico, Colorado and Ohio are not far behind, says Bradley for Electric. That would make 13 states and counting that follow California's clean air rules for cars instead of the weakened standards rolled out by the administration last month, the Trump administration, I should say. The number could grow to 23 states as well, what Electric calls Me Too ZEV states. That's how many states in last year, it was the end of last year, sued to block the Trump administration from undoing California's authority to set the strict car pollution rules. The entire balance of power regarding emissions rules is shifting before our eyes, says Electric. The so-called ZEV states could soon govern emissions rules for a bigger chunk of America than the EPA does. Watch this space. More and more are following California's lead. And because California is such a massive car market, once you've got other states following as well, it's just not worth the car makers trying to swim against the tide. So they'll just fall in line to all of the states that aren't adopting those stricter rules. Well, the Mini Electric is a car that I've seen talked about the last couple of days. Somebody I know called Tom Malogny, who is a very well-known and fantastically talented EV writer, works for Inside EVs, big into BMW i3s as well. I do a podcast with him on a Friday. If you haven't checked it out yet, a new podcast for Inside EVs. I was a guest on that last week. I'm back on this week with Tom and also Connor from Out to Spec Motoring. And if you want to listen to that, by the way, just search Inside EVs in your podcast app or on YouTube. And I know that Tom has a Mini for a couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to hearing how he gets on with it. For now, though, Autoblog have got their hands on a Mini Electric, and their reviewer says that they went out for a drive of 3.5 hours, came back into the driveway after doing a run of normal driving. So not hypermiling, but not being hyperactive on the throttle, normal driving. And after 3.5 hours of driving, came back with 32 miles remaining. The Mini SE's trip meter said that he'd driven 105.7 miles. So taking into account the final projected range, and of course this is all to do with the algorithm, but the projected range of what was left, that would be a total of 137.7 miles. Well, that is not just slightly higher, it's much better than the EPA range. It's 27.7 miles more and 25% more than what the EPA range says. But get this, when he charged it overnight, next morning, when he came back to the car, the range meter had reset. So rather than the range adjusting to his most recent driving style, which is what all EVs do, as you may well know if you're an EV driver, the guessometer changes how many miles are left based on how you drive the car, right? It had kind of ignored yesterday's journey and it had completely reset overnight to say, once again, 110. So he got in the car, said 110 miles. He went out and drove for 3.5 hours, drove for 105 miles, so he should have got home with 4.3, but actually got home with 32 miles left. So you think that maybe the car would remember his driving style, but having charged it overnight, getting back into it, it had gone back down to saying a total range of 110. And of course the EPA range for that is just less than that slightly. But more proof, like the Taycan, that we can't always trust the numbers we're given. Is that maddening? Yes. Is it frustrating? Yes. I haven't got an answer for that, by the way. I don't know what the answer is. Because it's the same with fossil cars, isn't it? It depends how you drive them. But still, if the EPA says that the Mini is going to do, I don't know, like the Mini's going to do 110 miles, say that the regulator where you are said that, you would want it to be kind of close. You wouldn't want it to be out by 25%. Anyway, you can read all of Dan Edmonds' review in Autoblog in the show that I will put in the show notes if you want to read more. The Mini Electric is certainly a car that has many, many fans, and if that's for you, then let me know. If you're on the order list for it, maybe you want to get yours. I'd love to hear from you. There's something about it that doesn't quite float my boat. Not that you care if you own one or want one. There's something. I used to drive a Mini Cooper, and I love Minis. I really love the styling of the Mini. I love the shape. It's not Mini anymore. It's a big car. But there's something about the way that they've just got the grille, which again is all closed off because EVs don't need as much cooling, and also I think I'd have to have a different spec wheels to the one that they always show, which are the kind of weird EV wheels that are less rolling wind resistance. There's something that just, everyone's different. Everyone's got personal taste. There's something that doesn't quite... The inside I totally get, but the outside, I don't know. I think the front end isn't quite there yet. But lots of fans for the Mini, and I'd love to hear, again, if you're on the list, if you want one, if you want to drive one, let me know. And again, I love to hear real-world results from anyone listening to this podcast, because... it does depend on how you drive your car. Let's talk about Lucid Motors. 4 months after breaking ground, Lucid Motors factory in Arizona is getting there. The roof is on, the sign is emblazoned on the side, and they're just waiting for construction to resume, says TechCrunch. Lucid Motors revealed today in a series of pictures that were put online the factory. It's off Interstate 10 between Phoenix and Tucson, and construction has been ahead of schedule, well ahead of schedule according to Lucid, when the governor imposed the stay-at-home order because of COVID-19. Well, despite the pause in construction, Lucid Motors say they don't expect a significant delay in its completion, even with the current events taken into account. Tooling and machinery for the factory was well underway before the crisis, according to the company. Lucid Motors' timeline is still to have production starting on the car by the end of the year. In 2018, Lucid Motors took $1 billion in funding from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. And Lucid back then, 2 years ago, said that $1 billion is what they need to finish the factory, finish development, and get the car on the road. And there's nothing I love seeing more than pictures like this, because so many concept pictures over the years have been released on email or renders done on a computer. But when you see a picture of a factory that's risen from the ground, like the factory's up, the roof is on, the tooling's going in, this is not a flight, a fancy, or a compliance car, or some sort of harebrained idea of we're going to make an EV, it'll do 1,000,000 miles, and yeah, okay, all right, we'll get on and make it and then boast about it afterwards. This is a company getting on and doing it, and we're looking forward to seeing the Lucid Air on the roads. Hopefully by the end of the year, but even if it slips into 2021 because of this shutdown, surely it's fine. The global rollout of their retail strategy will start in North America around the time that production starts as well. Finally, we started with a coronavirus story, we'll end with a virus story. More people are now considering the switch to electric cars because of what has happened. Now, there is no possible way that the virus can be spun into a positive news story. But, I'm always looking for a silver lining. I'm always looking for that thing that we can hang on to, that reason for hope, a reason to just feel good about what we're going through. And hopefully, it's very hard to spin, and I'm not trying to spin it. But if there is a silver lining to this horrible cloud of the pandemic, less air pollution is being documented because of the lockdown. More people have realised the benefits of moving away from combustion cars. A new study by Venson Automotive was released today, says Euronews. One of the participants surveyed by Venson, 45% agreed that the vast improvement in air quality at the current time is making them reconsider the need to drive a cleaner car. That's a stunning figure, right? 45% of people surveyed, I think it was 200 in the survey, said that because of the clean air observed, they are willing to reconsider buying an EV. 17% said it had reaffirmed their decision to be buying an electric car as the next car they buy. And the global pandemic, says Euronews, has given us a taste of the future that we could achieve. If only the emissions targets can be reached. If only more people can drive clean, green cars. And actually, an unpopular opinion, fewer cars, by the way, but I don't often bang on about that because, people find that hard to get their head around. But it's easier to sell people on an electric car than to sell them on the idea of not owning a car. But anyway, urban centres like New York have seen a sharp reduction in carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, with more than half of the world's population in lockdown. The coronavirus lockdown has cleared the air in India's mega cities, where air pollution often reaches dangerously high levels. In India alone, 1.5 million people. It's a stat that I read a while ago. And I'm paraphrasing the report, and I really hope I get this right. 1.5 million people die from air pollution per year. Now, I think that was in India, or maybe it was just in New Delhi. I'm going to look that up for tomorrow's show. But either way, right, we're getting these virus numbers, and I don't know what the figures are for where you are, but we've gone over 10,000 deaths, which is horrific, of course, that people have lost someone prematurely. But I think when you hear 1.5 million people die prematurely every year because of air pollution, the number is so big you can't comprehend it. I can comprehend 10,000 people because you can split it into areas of the country, and I look in the local newspaper and see our local figures, and it's horrible and it's stressful to see those numbers. 1.5 million is just too big to get your head around, so it almost becomes this thing that you don't try and think about. I'm going to look that up for tomorrow's show and get you a proper source and give you the proper news. It was either in India or New Delhi every year. 1.5 million people because of the filthy air quality. Man, if there's a silver lining, it's that we're cleaning up the air in those places. And maybe people look out on the horizon and see sights they haven't seen before. I don't know whether you've seen the social media pictures. There's a famous one going around of Los Angeles without the smog. Maybe it will just make people change a little behaviour. You never know. Question of the week this week is, how can the EV industry help people get into driving electric cars as soon as possible when this is all over? Is it discounts, incentives, test drives with a company like TryEV here in the UK, like tryev.com is an organisation that gets people into EVs to give them a taster. What can the EV industry do, car makers and the rest, to get people into EVs the minute this is all over? Let me know. You can email hello@evnewsdaily.com or leave a comment on the YouTube show. There are 748 people who support this podcast. There are not. There are 748 previous episodes in the archive. Goodness me, I'd be delighted if there were. And there are 237 people who support this podcast on Patreon. Patreon's a platform where you can support your creators who, in their own spare time, or either as their main thing that they do, create products and create shows or entertainment that you want to support. Check out Patreon, patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. All one word, no pressure. I will absolutely make this show either way. Thank you to everyone who continues to support. My premium partners are you, Phil Roberts, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group for clean tech talent, Porsche of the Village, Cincinnati, and Audi of Cincinnati East. Leave a little review on Apple Podcasts if you can, and it'll help grow the show. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.